Castles have long been a symbol of power, wealth, and beauty. They're not only architectural wonders, but also a reflection of the culture and heritage of the people who built them. So for today's video, join me. We're going to explore 15 of the most enchanting and stunning castles in the world. Number 15. Pele's Castle. When King Carol I of Romania visited the small village of Sinaia in the foothills of the Bucegi Mountains in the 1860s, he was captivated by its scenic location and commissioned the construction of a palace there. And could you really blame him? This resulting castle is easily one of the most stunning in all of Europe. The construction took just 10 years, but by the end of it, the Romanian royals had a summer palace equipping everything from a theater to a concert hall. The ornate 160-room palace was built in a neo-Renaissance style, and each room had its own identity and theme. After its inauguration in 1883, the king and his family began spending their summer homes in the Fairytale Castle, which also served as the venue for important meetings during the early months of World War I. The first couple to live there, King Carol I and his wife Queen Elizabeth of Romania, were known to be very different in temperament and interests. The king was an accomplished soldier who greatly expanded and improved the Romanian military, and the queen was more artistic, with a great fondness for music, art, and literature, and she even published poetry. It is said that Pele's too was a reflection of these two different personalities. For the king, there was an extensive 4,000-piece collection of weaponry from Europe and Asia on display in his weapons room. And for the queen, there was a beautifully appointed theater, whose walls and ceilings were decorated with frescoes by Austrian artists Gustav Klimt and Franz von Mosch. In fact, the first movie projection in Romania is reported to have taken place in this room. She also had a music room, which contained intricate pieces of teak furniture, gifted by the Indian Maharaja, and was used as a salon by Queen Elizabeth. Today, Pele's Castle is open to the public as a museum. Number 14. Matsumoto Castle. Now, despite setting the stage for future technology, Japan is pretty old, and if you know where to look, it shows. Originally known as Fukashi Castle, Matsumoto Castle was built in the 1500s during the Eisho period in Japan, long before the country opened its doors to the rest of the world. Now it's the oldest 6-story castle in Japan. Its scenic position against the backdrop of the Japanese Alps has made it an increasingly popular place to visit in this part of the country. Matsumoto sits tall in the Nagano Prefecture, and the castle holds great significance in the historical development of the country. It's known as a hirajiro, a name given to a castle strategically built on plains rather than on a hill or a mountain. Translating to plain castle, hirajiro were built during peaceful periods. At that time, the fortress, seen as a symbol of power, played a role in what was much more of a political and economic thing than strategic, like Nijo Castle in Kyoto. The topographic location makes it much more difficult to defend. Located in the center of towns, it nevertheless retains large moats and turrets as a means of protection. This castle is one of 5 castles designated as national treasures of Japan and is surrounded by cherry blossom trees Japan has become synonymous with. The wooden interior allows visitors to imagine what life was like for those who occupied this fortified site. Features inside the castle include openings where large stones were dropped onto invading enemies, openings for archers, and a large observation deck at the top, which provides a perfect vantage point over the surrounding area. Oh yeah, and the castle is surrounded by a moat, which is filled with native koi fish. Number 13. Bran Castle. In the center of Romania is a medieval castle believed to have once held a very famous or infamous prisoner, Vlad Tepes Dracula, aka Vlad the Impaler. The infamous Romanian ruler was immortalized as the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. The novel's believed to be inspired by the Romanian folklore serial killer Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Thanks to this loose link to the famous vampire, Bran Castle is popularly known in the region and beyond as Dracula's Castle. Bran Castle was built between 1377 and 1388 atop a strategic site overlooking a heavily trafficked mountain pass between Transylvania and Wallachia, the land over which Vlad the Impaler ruled in the 15th century. The history books say he liked to torture people and would impale his enemies on the battlefield to deter would-be attackers. During invasions, he was also known to use the scorched earth policy, a military strategy that consists of destroying any possible resources that the enemy could use by poisoning water supplies and burning crops. Yeah, he was a bad dude. Bran Castle is owned by the descendants of Queen Marie after it was given to them as a token of appreciation for her efforts to unify Romania. After her death, Bran Castle was inherited by her daughter, Princess Ileana, who ran it as a hospital during World War II. In 1948, the castle was seized by the communist regime, but it was returned to Dominic von Habsburg, Princess Ileana's son, in 2006. But now that the dust is settled, Bran Castle is open as a museum. Oh yeah, this castle is also an awesome location for Halloween events, like the 2016 competition to win the chance to stay in the castle on Halloween night, retracing the steps of Jonathan Harker from the opening pages of Bram Stoker's novel. Number 12. Hluboka Castle. In the small town of Hluboka and Vltavo resides a historic chateau that's long been considered the most beautiful castle in the country. The castle was initially constructed during the 13th century to serve the Bohemian royal family. It was reconstructed several times and reached its current state during the 19th century. During that time, Prince Johann von Schwarzenberg ordered the reconstruction of the castle in the Romantic style of England's Windsor Castle. The buildings and gardens are considered a national cultural monument of Czechia. During the 1940s, the castle was seized by Gestapo and was later confiscated by the government of Czechoslovakia following World War II. Gardens surrounding the castle are extremely charming. A stroll through the gardens is truly breathtaking and a sight to behold. From every angle, there's a different view that reveals more beauty, including golden pillars, statues, turrets, and a labyrinthine maze. There's also an art gallery and a tea room inside. The interior features ornamental furniture, huge wall carpets, wood carvings, dazzling chandeliers, armories, and other artifacts from the castle's long history. Like so many other European monuments, the Hluboka Castle has been through a lot, and it's an absolute miracle that this picturesque piece of human history still stands today. Number 11. Peña National Palace. Perched high atop a lush hill in São Pedro de Penafiel, Portugal, the Peña National Palace is a popular national landmark that looks as though it was created by mashing up towers, facades, and architectural flourishes from a bunch of different castles. Built in the 19th century by King Ferdinand II, the palace was meant to be a summer home for the Portuguese royals. Ferdinand's opulent tastes were imposed upon the builders and designers, creating a fevered dream come to life that, at least from the outside, seemed to indulge any and all of the king's passing tastes. It is good to be the king, I guess. One portion would resemble a medieval European castle, complete with ornate parapets. Then the portion directly next to it would be modeled after an Islamic tower dome. Each section of the facade was also presented in a different color. A long purple wing is flanked by a red clock tower, a yellow minaret, and so on. It's said that Ferdinand wanted the place to look like an opera, but today it's seen as not one of the greatest, but certainly the grandest examples of Romantic architecture. The interior of the palace was no less opulent or eclectic. Many of the rooms were designed to reflect a certain cultural influence, ranging from Middle Eastern styles to the European Baroque. When the royal family fled Portugal during the Revolution of 1910, the palace and its grounds were abandoned and fell into disrepair. Thankfully, though, the site was restored later in the 20th century and is now classified as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The palace can now be visited by anyone willing to make the trek, king or not, and it's well worth it since visitors get to experience the whole world of architecture in one stop. Number 10. Frederiksborg Castle. Just north of Copenhagen lies an imposing royal palace complex dating to the early 17th century, built for King Christian IV, who ruled over Denmark and Norway. As if throwing a rich kid's fit, the monarch first demolished his father's manor house where he was born, and then built his palatial Dutch Renaissance-style castle on the site. Dubbed Frederiksborg Castle, it remains the largest Renaissance castle in the Nordic region. In 1859, a major fire destroyed much of the castle, and a national collection and lottery were held to rebuild this structure. As if the heavens themselves intervened, the chapel came out of the fire almost completely intact, and it's therefore still in its original state, which is important. When the restored castle reopened in 1878, it became home to the Museum of Natural History, which showcases art and artifacts from Danish history within the palace walls. The museum's portrait collection, the largest in the country, is like taking a walk through time. Visitors can also explore many restored staterooms inside the castle, including the Great Hall, a grand ballroom above the chapel. These beautiful spaces offer a glimpse of royal life in Denmark centuries ago. Outside, the castle complex is an architectural gem in a fairy tale setting. Spread across 3 small islands are on the Slottsøen, or Castle Lake. While the castle was being built, King Christian IV stayed in his Italian-style pleasure palace on the other side of the lake. When it was demolished in 1720, it was replaced by the beautiful Baroque gardens we see today. What went on in the pleasure palace, only the king will know. A visit to the castle would not be complete without a royal stroll through the impeccably landscaped English gardens, all full of beautiful flowers and perfectly trimmed hedges, and offer a picture-perfect view of the castle and the lake. Number 9. Corvin Castle. In the heart of Transylvania, Dracula's favorite, one of Europe's largest castles looks like it sits atop a rocky bluff with nothing but a thin bridge allowing access. This is Corvin Castle, which looks like something straight out of a dark fairy tale, largely because that's what the restorers wanted. Built in the mid-15th century, the castle was the work of military leader John Hunyadi, who constructed the tall structure over the remains of a keep built by Charles I. Corvin Castle is split into three large areas: the Knight's Hall, the Diet Hall, and the circular stairways. Each of these three parts is surrounded by both circular and rectangular towers that were used for both defenses and a prison. The elaborate architecture was designed in a rich Gothic style that accentuates the already impressive structure. The castle was kept in near-perfect condition during Hunyadi's lifetime, but after he died, the castle fell into swift decline. It wasn't until the 17th century that there was more interest in restoring this medieval castle. As the reconstruction began, the workers redesigned it to reflect what they considered a Gothic castle should look like, which explains much of its currently fanciful look. A number of legends are also associated with the castle too. Though this is unlikely, tourists are told that Vlad the Impaler spent some 7 years in the dungeons of Corvin Castle, a stay that resulted in his eventual madness. Number 8. Alcazar de Segovia. Since the Roman times, the craggy cliff overlooking the city of Segovia has been used for the foundation of a fortification. Its location absolutely perfect for military defense. The Berber Almoravids built a wooden fortress here during the early Middle Ages, first documented in 1122, shortly after King Alfonso VI of Leon and Castile reconquered Segovia. Today, these early structures have all but disappeared, and the cliff is topped with a towering castle. With the city reclaimed by the Christians, the Alcazar became one of the favorite residences of the Spanish kings. Little by little, additional construction and renovation work shaped the fortress into this beautiful palace, with each royal family adding their own little touch. By the 17th century, the royal court was relocated to Madrid, and the Alcazar served as the state prison until the Royal Artillery School was founded here in 1762 by Charles III. Most of the roofing on the noble quarters was destroyed by a fire in 1862, but thanks to the 1839 engravings by José María Abreu, they were restored to their original state. The Alcazar de Segovia has been used in several films, such as Orson Welles' Chimes at Midnight and the Arthurian musical Camelot, but its most distinctive feature in popular culture is noted for different reasons. In the 1937 Disney film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the Wicked Queen's castle was modeled after the Alcazar de Segovia, its architectural designs and hilltop location reflecting the original. Later on, Disney used the Alcazar inspiration again to design Cinderella Castle, the symbolic fairy tale castle of Walt Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland. Today, this place is a museum that chronicles the medieval history of the edifice and is home to a military archive building. Number 7. Kasbah Ayit Ben Haddou. As this fortified city of towering kasbahs and crumbling walls took beatings from the brutal rains, its citizens defected into more modern digs on the other side of the Onila River, but a few remained. While in the 1940s, more than 90 families were living in the Kasbah of Ayit Ben Haddou, today only 5 families are still living inside the fortress. A UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987, Ayit Ben Haddou was once a major stop along the caravan route between Marrakesh and the Sahara. The striking visage of southern Moroccan architecture is thought to be from the 17th century and contains a mosque, 2 cemeteries, one Jewish, the other Muslim, a public square, and areas for threshing grain outside of the ramparts. Despite not being completely abandoned, the earthen architecture is vulnerable to weather and lack of care. While the site has maintained its authenticity, the lack of maintenance and its sparsity of inhabitants led to serious deterioration. Assigned a 5-year plan by officials, it received some care and restoration between 2007 and 2012, using as much wood and as many earthen techniques as possible to keep the site historically preserved. One of the remaining families even opened a traditional cafe to give visitors an overview of the ancient lifestyle on the fortress and as a way to preserve their tradition and heritage. And if this fortress looks familiar, it's because the Kasbah is a set for a plethora of films and TV shows like Game of Thrones, Lawrence of Arabia, and Gladiator. Number 6. Quinta da Regalera. Quinta da Regalera is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Sintra, Portugal, designed by Carvalho Monteiro. Italian architect Luigi Manini designed the 10-hectare estate with its enigmatic buildings, believed to hide symbols related to alchemy, masonry, the Knights Templar, and the Rosicrucians. Who knows what sort of eldritch secrets are hidden within these beautiful stone walls? The architecture of the palace evokes Roman, Gothic, Renaissance, and Manueline architecture styles. The construction of the current estate commenced in 1904, and most of it was concluded by 1910. The gardens are incredibly and equally ornate as well. Set on a hillside, a multitude of fountains, grottos, statues, caves, and ponds are all connected both above ground via lovely paths and by a series of underground tunnels lit today by strings of fairy lights. The grounds also include a chapel and an aquarium built to look as if it naturally existed amongst the rock. The Quinta da Regaleira stands as a stark contrast to other Portuguese castles, like the Penha National Palace. It just goes to show what sort of wonders humans can achieve through cultural exchange. Number 5. Mehrangarh Fort. One of the best preserved and largest forts in India, the Mehrangarh Fort towers 400 feet above the city of Jodhpur. Founded in 1459 by Rajput leader Rao Jodha of the Rathore clan, the fort is owned by the Jodhpur royal family to this very day. You can see the palatial hill fort from just about everywhere in the city, its distinctive walls soaring above the rocky plateau from which they were carved. Mehrangarh translates to Fort of the Sun, referring to the myth that the Jodhpur royal family descended from the sun god Surya. A visit to Mehrangarh Fort takes hours, but it's worth every minute. Here you can experience the history of war, the culture of honor, and the life of extravagance that the Rajput royals enjoyed all those centuries ago. There really is nothing else like it in the world. After the long walk from the city up to the fort, you enter through the main gate and continue to walk up a ramp through a series of 7 spectacular gates. At a gate called Loha Pol, iron spikes are embedded in the wood to prevent an elephant attack, and a set of small red handprints on the wall memorialize a horrific historic event. These are the handprints of the wives of the Maharaja Man Singh's widows, left there as they went to throw themselves on his funeral pyre in 1843. Inside the fort, the royal palaces now serve as the museum. Visitors can walk from one to another through enclosed courtyards adorned with lattice work and charming balconies. The former palaces are filled with antiques, artifacts, artworks, and even fully intact rooms. You'll find miniature paintings, textiles, weaponry, and household goods, even one room that houses a collection of elaborate royal cradles from the 17th century. In the former bedroom of Maharaja Takhat Singh, also known as the Sheesh Mahal, Hall of Mirrors, every inch is covered in painted panels, carvings, tiles, and, of course, mirrors. Number 4. The Swallow's Nest. The last place anyone would expect to see a giant neo-Gothic castle is on a cliff overlooking the Crimean Sea, but lo and behold, the Swallow's Nest never got that memo. Constructed on the top of the Aurora Cliff overlooking the sea outside the town of Gaspra, the Swallow's Nest now stands as a curious remnant of Imperial Russia. The original structure on the property was a small wooden cottage that was constructed at the behest of a Russian general at the turn of the 19th century, 1895. However, several years later, the cottage was placed under the ownership of A.K. Tobin, a physician at the imperial court and doctor to the Tsar. The cottage changed hands yet again, this time being purchased by Baron von Stengel, who demolished the original cottage and replaced it with the neo-Gothic manor that still stands to this day. Although it is classified architecturally as a castle, it's not really a castle in the truest sense of the word. It was not built to house and protect its occupants, with the turrets and battlements being more for show than any practical application. When you first look at the Swallow's Nest, it's hard not to marvel at the simple physics of the structure, though. The castle is literally built on the edge of the cliff, with parts of the balconies and patios actually extending beyond the rock face, jutting out into thin air. The whole building looks as though it could, at a moment's notice, topple right over into the Crimean Sea. That being said, the Swallow's Nest survived a large earthquake that struck the region in 1927, 7 on the Richter scale to be exact. Although the building itself was not badly damaged, the underlying rock was. The cliff developed a large vertical crack as a result, and the Swallow's Nest was closed for more than 4 decades after being deemed structurally unsafe. Renovations didn't begin until 1968. Engineers inserted a large concrete plate into the cliff that helped to shore up the crack left by the quake. In 1975, an Italian restaurant risked the plunge and opened in the castle. Number 3. Trakai Island Castle. Some 17 miles west of Lithuania's capital city of Vilnius sits the historic town of Trakai, sitting right on the shores of Lake Galva. Near Trakai, the first castle was built sometime around the 13th century, and in the following decades the town saw massive development and the construction of a second castle, Peninsula Castle. Lastly, a third one was constructed, now fittingly known as the Island Castle. Located on a small island in Lake Galva, just off the coast of Trakai, the Trakai Island Castle was besieged and damaged by the Teutonic Knights in 1377. After being repaired, the castle was greatly expanded, growing to occupy the entire island. During the course of the 15th century, the castle has lost its strategic importance, being located firmly in the territory of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was turned into a notable residence, with few frescoes and decorations, and then into a prison. After suffering damage again during a 17th century war, the castle was abandoned and left in ruins until the 20th century, when plans to repair the castle started to emerge. After extensive restoration work between the 1950s and 60s, the castle returned to its former 15th century splendor. Now, tourists can enjoy its scenic location and visit the historical museum inside the castle, with the odds of war returning being slim to none. Number 2. Neuschwanstein Castle. Sleeping Beauty Castle at Disneyland, Cinderella Castle at the Magic Kingdom, and numerous other magical castles were all inspired by Neuschwanstein Castle. It served as the awe-inspiring retreat of the fairytale king Ludwig II of Bavaria and enhances the already romantic mountain and forest scenery. The first stone of Neuschwanstein Castle was laid in 1869. The technology used to build this castle was considered modern and advanced. New innovations such as electricity, plumbing, heat, and steamboats were used in the construction of the castle, and Ludwig himself was considered responsible for the introduction of many of these inventions to the area. In 1886, as the massively expansive castle neared completion, the state commissioner pronounced Ludwig insane and arrested him soon after. The day after he was arrested, Ludwig requested the commissioner to go on a walk in the woods with him. Both were found mysteriously dead in a lake later that evening. Ludwig was never able to actually see the finalized castle, and it didn't receive his name until after his death, but his taste for elegant and extravagant design resonates throughout the interior of this Romanesque-style castle. After his death, the castle was opened for the public to help pay off the expenses. It just barely survived World War II, with the German army using the castle to store both munitions and plundered French art. As the sun began to set on the German army, they contemplated blowing the castle to bits with dynamite to prevent the Allied forces from finding out just how much they were looting. Luckily, the plan never came to fruition. Today, the castle is one of the biggest attractions in Bavaria and manages to draw well over 1 million people a year. Number 1. Mont Saint-Michel. Sitting proudly atop solid rock in the middle of a bay, the abbey and surrounding town of Mont Saint-Michel was originally only accessible when the tides permitted. Thanks to the power of modern boats, there is now 24-hour access to the island. Mont Saint-Michel remains a singularly beautiful structure on an amazing geological formation. The abbey was originally built to the schematics of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, after both an abbot and a count had visions of Saint Michel. Historians suggest, though, that this wasn't merely a scheme to increase tourism into the area. This place is also of interest for those with a taste for Arthurian myth, as some claim that this place is where King Arthur himself battled a virgin-devouring giant before going off on his campaign against the Emperor of Rome. No matter how tall the tales, one thing is true. Mont Saint-Michel is the most enchanting castle in the world. I'll see you next time.
Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.
The Top 5 show has launched channel memberships. Thank you to our channel members.